So the next one is a category called merit, the key to good fortune. And so there are several different sutras here that talk about merit. The first one is meritorious deeds. And again, we're not going to go through all of the detail here, but he's talking about happiness, meritorious deeds as an expression denoting happiness, and things that are desirable, wished for, dear, agreeable results from those meritorious deeds. He places an emphasis here on loving kindness and talks about the ripening of three kinds of deeds: giving, self-mastery, and refraining. Doesn't spell out refraining from what, but just the general principle of refraining. So I would say that probably involves a middle way approach to all kinds of possibilities there. So first, giving, being generous is important. Self-mastery, getting a little bit of control over your actions. And then refraining would be actually implementing those choices. The third basis of merit is the second one, or three bases of merit, excuse me. There are three ways of making merit. One is giving, the second one moral discipline, and the third one development of meditation. So then he goes through those three, talks first about giving. It only has a limited degree of applicability here in terms of rebirth and so forth. Then giving as well as by moral discipline. So we're combining those two, has more of a high degree level, but is not, we haven't gotten to the point of meditation there. So we can be reborn among humans with a favorable condition, or devas, and there with a high degree of giving and moral discipline, or the Tava Timsa devas, and here again through giving, moral discipline to a very high degree, surpassing the devas. And then he goes on through and has all of those other realms related to that. On the next page, 168, it gives the third of the collection, this particular group, the best kinds of confidence. And he talks about four different kinds of confidence here. And what are the four? The beings, whether footless or with 2 feet, 4 feet, or many. So these are beings, not necessarily human beings. Whether having form or are formless, percipient or non-percipient, neither percipient nor percipient, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly enlightened one, is declared as best among them. So for those who have confidence in the best, the result is the best. So he's giving several different groupings here, and the results will be related to that. Things that are conditioned, he talks a little bit about. Conditioned would mean things that are interdependent or are impermanent or can be divided into parts. And then a category of conditioned or unconditioned, but dispassion is declared among those. And then there's also communities or groups, such as the sangha of disciples, and this one is declared as the best among those different categories, being worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, the unsurpassed field of merit for the world. Those who have confidence in the sangha have confidence in the best and will get the result that is the best. And then he goes through and some verses here which more or less reframe that. Then in the next part, he focuses on each of three bases of merit specifically. So the previous ones, we've been talking about them in a general way. There are these three bases. So here we go through each one of them. The first of those is giving. So if people knew the result of giving, and so here the key to this short one is that if people knew, as I know, he says, the result of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given. without sharing. So without being stingy. That's the main point of this particular one. The second one are reasons for giving, and he gives 8 reasons for giving. Giving out of affection, in an angry mood, out of stupidity, out of fear, out of family tradition, the wish to be reborn in a good destination, and happiness, then happiness and joy will arise because of that, or because one ennobles and adores the mind. So he doesn't actually spell all of that out in terms of what the consequences will be, but those are the reasons for giving. They appear, though, to me to be kind of in a level as you go through each one, becomes a little bit more important. The next one on page 170 is the gift of food, and it kind of relates to the one before. If you knew what I know, then you would give before taking your own food. And so here a lady serves him with various kinds of delicious food, and then when he is finished, he addresses her as follows: Supavasa, by giving food, gives 4 things to those who would receive it: long life, beauty, happiness, and strength. By giving long life, she herself will be endowed with long life, human or divine. By giving beauty, she herself will be endowed with beauty, human or divine. By giving happiness, she herself will be endowed with happiness, human or divine. And by giving strength, she herself will be endowed with strength, human or divine. So there's a connection there between the act of giving and the benefit that they get in terms of how it affects the individual to whom it was given. So there's a linkage there as a part of that. The food is just the example, so it could apply to all forms of giving. The next one is a superior person's gifts, and again, it's the kind of gifts that are being given. It talks about gifts of faith, giving the gift respectfully, doing it at the right time, doing it with a generous heart, and doing it without denigration. And then out of this, we develop faith, respectfully. We give it respectfully, we give it at the right time and with a generous heart, and he spells out a little bit of the details associated with each of those. Because he gives a gift without denigrating himself and others, he becomes rich, affluent, wealthy, and no loss of his wealth takes place from any quarter, whether from fire, floods, the king, bandits, or unloved heirs. And so that kind of gives the example of one of the examples from one of the specific reasons, but all of these are somewhat similar in that respect. Number 5 is mutual support. So he's talking about monks, Brahmins, and householders. And then these are very helpful to you. They provide you with robes. He's talking about the householders are very helpful to the other 2 groups there. And oftentimes he uses the word Brahmins not in the sense of a caste, but in the sense of the arhats. So monks and Brahmins, householders are very helpful to you. They provide you with robes, alms, lodgings, medicines, and you monks are very helpful to the Brahmins and householders. You teach them the Dharma with correct meaning and wording, and you proclaim the spiritual life in its fulfillment and complete purity. Thus, monks, this spiritual life is lived with mutual support for the purpose of crossing the flood and making a complete end of suffering. So again, that interdependence of the community that supports the sangha and the sangha that then also supports the community. Number 6, the rebirth on account of giving. Here, the 8 kinds of rebirth on account of giving. So a gift to an ascetic or a Brahmin, offering food, drink, clothing, and vehicles, garlands, scents, and unguents, the bedding, lodging, and lighting. He now notices affluent nobles, Brahmins, householders enjoying themselves provided and furnished with the 5 objects of sensual desire. After death, may I be reborn among them. This thought of his aims at what is low will lead him to such a rebirth. However, I declare only for morally pure, not for the immoral. So our actions, our deeds are an important part of this, not just our thoughts about it. Then again, making another gift in how he now hears of long life, beauty, great happiness, and wishes to be reborn among them. However, again, he declares this is only for the morally pure, not the immoral. Then another one makes a gift, Devas of Brahma's company, and again, only one free of lust. Now for one who, not for one who is lustful. And lust, of course, means something of strong desire. It's not just desire, but a really strong desire. Desire for the Dharma and so forth is fine. The fourth group here is moral discipline, which is the second base of merit. The first sutra related to the 5 precepts, which we have talked about before. First, he mentions the 8 streams of merit. So, refuge, giving refuge to the Buddha, refuge to the Dharma, refuge to the sangha, and then 5 gifts. Giving up destruction of life, giving up taking what is not given, giving up sexual misconduct, giving up false speech, giving up wines, liquors, intoxicants, the basis for negligence, which is the key word there, the basis for negligence. It gets in the way of our practice and living our lives. Then on 174, again, we have what we mentioned before, the Uposatha observance of the full moon, new moon, and the half moons. And so he talks about the 8 factors, and again here it's the 5 precepts plus the 3 others, 1 meal a day and abstaining from dancing and so forth, and abandoning the use of high and luxurious beds and seats. So that observance, that's pretty much the same as what was in the introduction. The next category is the third and final base of merit, which is meditation. So here he first talks about loving kindness. Monks, whatever grounds there are for making merit productive of a future birth, all these do not equal a 16th part of the liberation of the mind by loving kindness. The liberation of the mind by loving kindness surpasses them and shines forth bright and brilliant. And then he goes through some other examples of these to try and make that same point. In number 2, on page 177, he looks at the 4 divine abodes, the 4 immeasurables, and goes through each of those. On page 178, he gets into the actual description of this in paragraph 24 there. Here a monk dwells, pervading 1/4 with the mind imbued with loving kindness, likewise a second, a third, and a fourth. So 1/4 of the mind, and then 2/4 or half, and then 3/4, and then the entire mind is taken up with loving kindness. And so here, the 4 directions, up, down, all of these things are imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. In this way, no limiting action remains. None persists. When the liberation of mind by loving kindness is developed, no limiting action remains. None persists. And then he goes through the same thing with compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity, although only the last one is repeated in here. And then number 3 is insight surpasses all. And so in this one, he says, in the past householder, there was a Brahmin named Velama, and he gave such great alms offering. And then he goes through a list of all of these offerings that he gave. And at the top of 179 there, as great as was the alms offered by that Brahmin, Velama, read that again. As great as was the alms offering that the Brahmin Velama gave, it would be even more difficult. I can't get these words right. I'm sorry. It would be even more fruitful if one would feed a single person possessed of right view. Okay? So that's more fruitful. Or to feed a single once returner. Or even more would be to feed a single non-returner. even more to feed a single arhat, even more a single Pacceka Buddha, and even more a perfectly enlightened Buddha, and even more a sangha of monks, and even more to build a monastery for the sangha, and even more with a trusting mind to go for refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and to take the 5 precepts, and even more is to develop a mind of loving kindness. And as great as all this might be, it would be even more fruitful still to develop the perception of impermanence. So loving kindness is a very high level, but the idea of understanding impermanence even more so. Okay, that'll conclude for this week.